Hi, welcome to the other 167 here. I'm Brandon, and this is part 2 of the Soul Tie series. I trust you have been following up with the previous part so we can all be on the same page. You're living a lie, the need to overcome ungodly soul ties. So, you're living a lie. Now, we have covered in the previous parts that soul ties can be very powerful, ungodly soul ties can be very detrimental. They bring consequences, and some. And the worst part about a soul tie is it's never physical. It's always playing in your head. It's always weighing you down. It is a spiritual binding that you make, or an agreement that you make in the spirit world, which can be ungodly, which is not the will of God. And these are developed through different ways, through getting physical with people, through getting physical relationships, especially with those who we are not meant to be with. In the by the grace of God and in the will of God, which is contrary to God's will. So that, in a nutshell, is what we are recapping from the previous part. So you're living a lie, okay? Is the heading for this part 2, and the need to overcome ungodly soul ties. So um, in this part we'll be delving into the depths of what soul ties are, how serious they are rather, because a lot of us are totally oblivious to the fact that we even have a soul tie. you know unless you are exposed to it, unless you expose your soul tie, you will never know really that you have a soul tie. And a soul tie can last for even years together, if you are not given the right guidance, if you don't have the right mentors in your life, if you aren't in the word, if you aren't spending time with God and his word, then certainly a soul tie can last for years together, sadly. So, point number one is a soul tie, whether godly or ungodly, can be very powerful. It is dead by virtue of it long gone from your life physically, but is negatively made alive by your thoughts. So, you see, although the person may not be there in your life any longer, although the person has long gone from your life, and you're not in touch with the person, your soul tie is dead by virtue of it long gone from your life. So although a person may not be there in your life, it is still alive in the spirit world by virtue of your thoughts, right? So when you welcome these ungodly thoughts, or the thoughts of that person who is long gone from your life, it can actually weigh you down. It can bring a sense of gloominess and a sense of despair, and you are, or at least if you're not aware that you have a soul tie, you certainly are aware that something is weighing you down every single day. And Ephesians 6:12 actually exposes what we actually go through as human beings, as children of God, as those walking in the light. It says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." So you see, although we are physical, uh, there are these agreements that are done in the spirit world, with rulers of darkness, which is obviously Satan and his kingdom, spiritual wickedness in high places. So these thoughts, these ungodly soul ties that we have, are actually exalting themselves against the knowledge of God. They are taking high places in your life by the sheer allegiance of yours with them, to them, by virtue of you constantly inviting those thoughts in your head, constantly trying to sometimes get comfortable with those thoughts. You see, relationships are very sensitive, right? So, although a person may not be the one for you, their affection, the affection rather, they exchange with you, can give you a sense of refuge, which is very temporary and may not be permanent. For example, you reminisce a certain moment that you have had with that person, obviously, who isn't part of God's will for your life. When you reminisce those thoughts, it comforts you temporarily. It gives you a sense of good feeling for that moment, but then in the long run you know that it is not the will of God. So, and then obviously then you come back to your senses, and then you say, oh, and then it gives you the sense of despair because you know that person is out of your life. So these are the spiritual agreements that we have made involuntarily in the spirit realm by virtue of us getting physical or going ahead to physically with a person, and getting physical with anyone outside of marriage is not right, or at least getting physical in depth, for example, like fornication and all of that. So point number 2 is, so that's the depth of what soul ties can be and how they affect us. Point number 2 is an ungodly soul tie can hinder or oppress you from moving forward into the will of God for your life. So when you have an ungodly soul tie, you're day in and day out living a lie. You're living in despair. You're living with a lot of oppression. You're not able to go forward. You're not able to dive into the will of God that He has for you and your future. So you're constantly being weighed down, or you're probably hindered, or maybe you're finding yourself going back. So when you go back to those thoughts, when you go back to those memories, or when you invite those thoughts and memories into your life, into your mind, you are actually literally going back rather than going ahead. So they can hinder what God really has for you. When He has someone else for you, when He has someone in His right, holy, perfect time, when He has orchestrated His will for your life, and then you are going back, in fact, to misery, going back to trying to derive this temporary refuge which is not even actually existing, but it is made alive by your thoughts. That is how we can hinder ourselves from moving forward into God's will. With that said, 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 3 onwards, 6 through 6, it says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds." And you see, a soul tie can also be a stronghold. If you're holding onto it so strongly, it can be a stronghold, right? Not anything you're not able to let go. It can be an addiction, it can be a person you're not able to let go when God doesn't want that person for you. That's a stronghold, right? So a soul tie is a stronghold also. So but we have mighty weapons which are not carnal, but they are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when our obedience is fulfilled. So you see, the imaginations that have to be cast down are these imaginations, are these thoughts that are playing in our head of people or of the soul ties that we have, things of the past. So when we rather spend time with the Word of God, it becomes very clear to us that all these things written are literally for us. They are literally speaking in detail our lives, what we go through as human beings. So I encourage you to soak into this verse, to these verses from 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 3 onwards through 6. And you will realize that this verse is actually speaking to you. It is actually speaking to you, right? So I hope part 2 has helped you. We are looking forward to part 3. Have a wonderful, blissful week ahead. God bless you.